like to introduce our first speaker, Ms. Manika Bhargava. Ms. Manika Bhargava is country logistics leader from Dow Chemical International Pvt. Limited. In this role, she is accountable for pan-India operations of transportation, warehousing, bulk terminals, import and export operations, as well as customs and trade compliances verticals. She is a chemical engineer by qualification and has also completed her MBA in marketing and operations. She has total work experience of 14 years and has taken on different roles within supply chain and purchasing domains in local, regional, and global capacities. She is Six Sigma Green Belt certified and has also recently graduated in Dow Women Leaders Program from INSEAD, France. She is active on industry forums and recently won the award for Most Promising Women Logistics Leader of the Year at the 4th India Logistics and Warehousing Excellence Awards organized by ISCM Forums. We welcome you, Ms. Manika, and over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Shivani, for that wonderful introduction, and good morning, everyone. Dow is indeed proud to be the knowledge partner for this prestigious event, and I'm looking forward to the next. Is my screen visible?
Yes, it is visible. Yes, we can see the presentation.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So the topic is interesting and relevant, digitalization and chemical logistics. I have a few slides, but we'll keep it very simple and stick to the basics. Logistics is a vast domain, as Shivani rightly said in the introduction. So what we'll do, even though we'll cover a flavor of the entire domain, we'll stay slightly more focused on the transportation piece, which I personally believe is the most complex area within logistics when it comes to digitalization. So even before we talk about the digital piece, just wanted to share a snapshot of the kind of complexity that is involved in chemical logistics overall. So chemical industry typically, though this may not apply for 100% of the companies in the industry, but typically we operate in the B2B domain. What it means is we are looking at centralized storage models. We are not looking at being absolutely close to the customer like like retail industry. And the GST implementation that happened a few years ago, I think in 2017, further simplified the needs of the operating model. So if we look at how it translates into the transportation piece, what it means is you are typically transporting higher payloads for your last mile delivery. So when you say last mile delivery, it's not really a small leg at the end of the value chain. It could sometimes mean vehicles crossing thousands of kilometers to reach the customers. Secondly, even though the recently released national logistics policy has been a refresher and of course will start catalyzing a transportation, so making use of rail and inland waterways. But overall, if we look at right now where we are, the dependence on road is still very high. And now you couple that with the terrain that is there in India. So national and state highways, for example, comprise only 5% of the total roads that we have in the country for transporting our goods. And the average truck speed in India is 30 to 40 kilometers per hour compared to a global average of 60 to 80 kilometers. So coupled with longer distances, what it means is higher lead times, which adds to the complexity. On top of that, you add a layer that when you talk about chemicals, you're not always dealing with simple chemicals, right? There are different HAZ classes involved. And all this put together kind of leads to a situation where safety and sustainability become absolute top priorities for the industry. So in all the discussions that we have, even at an industry level, of course, cost and customer service focus is also there, but safety and sustainability win the game over there. With this, if you look at the core areas of focus, so now that we have established what our priorities are, and if we look at the core areas of focus in your typical people, process, technology front, so you can do everything that you want to do. You can put the most complex digital technology in place, but at the end of the day, you are still dependent on the driver carrying your material across the country from point A to point B, and you need to absolutely make sure that this transportation piece is safe with zero impact to people, property, and environment. So driver development becomes or remains a key focus area for the industry. Second is a focus on robust processes, so around service providers that you are qualifying, their audits, their trainings, and on a daily basis, what kind of robust vehicle qualification process are you implementing in your organization? And all this is proactive, so all these processes contribute towards making sure that we are preventing incidents from happening. But despite that, if an incident still happens, you also need a robust emergency response process so that we ensure that quick and efficient cleanup of the entire incident end to end is done in safe and sustainable manner. If you look at the technology leg, a lot of it remains very basic and primitive. There have been some innovations for sure, but the basics again remain the same. So, what equipment are you using for transporting your chemicals? What are the vehicle type that you are implementing, especially with some new vehicle types getting available in the market? What kind of packaging are you delivering your product with? And securement. So, how are you securing your product, and then how are you securing the load? So these are the basic focus areas which will remain till the time we need to transport chemicals from one place to another. Um, Shivani, you can still hear me, right? I saw a pop-up saying that there was an issue in the internet connection.
No, no, we can hear you very clearly.
Okay.
I can hear you. I can see you. No problem.
Maybe it was just a quick disruption. Okay. So yeah, so the basics remain the same. And then, so when we ask the question around, so what becomes your digital focus area for chemical logistics? So in chemical logistics, we don't look at, typically again, we don't look at digital implementations as something that will completely change the operating model. But we are mainly looking at control tower mechanisms, which are layered over the processes that we have in these basic areas to make sure that whatever we need to accomplish is being accomplished in a non-negotiable manner. And that's where most of the latest tools and technology available in the market are also targeting towards. Um, if we move to the overall considerations, so the focus areas we covered, I want to very quickly talk about you know uh, some nuances with respect to the digital strategy of organizations when we are planning our logistics roadmap. And I know this sounds very, very simple, but I totally want to emphasize on point one mentioned here, which is around the fact that your organizational strategy should always, always, always define your digital strategy. And you may be tempted to fall into the trap of, FOMO. FOMO for millennials, or hopefully most of you would know, means fear of missing out. And what this refers to is that you hear of a buzzword, you hear of some new technology in the market, you come to know that your competitors have implemented it, and you are immediately tempted to copy paste it in your organization, and that's a trap. So it's extremely important to understand who you are as an organization and where do you want to go before you finalize your strategy and any particular investment, especially long-term ones that you are making into your digital strategy. The second layer of consideration comes is around the decision of, should we go with a centralized technology? Should we go with a decentralized technology? And this simply means, so centralized means you want to keep the control with yourself, you want to do the implementation yourself, the investment yourself. And then, you kind of layer it over all your service providers who are providing services in the 2PL, 3PL, 4PL categories. Decentralized technology means that you are actually relying on the investments that are being made by your service providers in their digital technologies, and then you are, of course, using those services via a fee. So you're not directly investing in the technology yourself. And honestly, there is no right answer to this question. So it's never a one size fits all. And again, it's linked to the your own organizational strategy and where you want to go. But typically, some points to be considered there for this decision are around the complexity of your service provider network. And when I say complexity, not only, how many service providers are you dealing with, how many modes of transportation or you're dealing with, what is the size of your organization, but also the differential positions in the digital maturity curve that your service provider network has. So what it means is, I can take a decision to have a decentralized way of working and I want to rely on my service providers technology. But have I evaluated whether all my service providers are on the point in the digital maturity curve I would like them to be? And that should, in fact, then go into your vendor qualification process as an important checkpoint. The second point around this is business continuity amidst disruptions. So, of course, when you are relying on technology which you don't have direct control over, if there are disruptions to that, do you have the right business continuity plans that can be developed to help around or support your own continuity during those disruptions? The third, and this becomes very, very relevant for larger organizations, especially MNCs, is data security. So when you rely on service provider network and you're trying to integrate, let's say, the networks into a common portal or a common platform, how are you managing the data security piece? And fourth, and definitely not the least, in fact, I think this probably becomes the number one criteria for most organizations, is around cost. I would like to keep full control. I would like to do everything myself. I would like to implement all the latest technologies available in the market that are making sense for the future of my organization. But affordability. So, at what cost can I really, go ahead with a centralized strategy? And finally, flexibility. So, do you want to have an integrated approach over there, or you want to get, the best of all worlds by decentralizing the softwares or the technology that you are implementing? So, food for thought, no right answer, but these are the considerations that are very important before you make that decision. Um, Next, I want to talk about rapid innovations, and I don't think this is specific to chemical logistics. I think it's in general applicable to any industry with respect to technology. And the first thing that comes to my mind is the entire story of audio cassettes, video cassettes, CDs, pen drives, and how everything kept becoming obsolete. So, but it's important to be mindful and aware that rapid innovations will continue in the technology space. And so, any long term decision that we make with respect to our digital investments, it's important to be aware and ensure that we are not taking decisions which become irreversible and become detrimental to our P&L accounts. And finally, scalability. I think this is a very, very important checkpoint and highly underrated in the industry today, is around, any new technology that you get into your system or you're excited about, and this is the benefit that the technology will deliver for your organization. But is it scalable? And to give a quick data point, sharing nothing new, but just an interesting statistic to show how fragmented we are in the Indian market with respect to truck ownership. So only 10% of truck operators today in India own more than 25 trucks. So even though there's been a lot of consolidation and growth in the industry, overall it remains fragmented. And so any technology that you get excited about, before assuming that the theoretical benefits will translate into real benefits, the scalability checkpoint and the operating model to be utilized to ensure that scalability becomes a very important consideration. I want to also talk very briefly about digital trends. I don't think any of this is new for anybody on the call, but it's interesting to note that, how necessity becomes the mother of invention. So in 2020, when the pandemic hit us, and I think, of course, the entire world changed from what we knew before. the logistics industry took turns like nobody had imagined. And I remember, in fact, the effect is still there. So we know what happened to the ocean freight market, and how the entire industry was suddenly chasing end-to-end container visibility, because my lead times were no longer applicable, my cost models were no longer applicable. And that's how we started seeing a plethora of options in the how can we ensure end-to-end, not just the physical container visibility, but also the milestone visibility on where the container is with respect to clearances or paperwork involved. um, Second example in that is around customs interfaces. So, Indian customs is already moving, or was already moving at that time, towards getting fully digitalized. But with overnight need for contactless operations, even the residual element that we had became paperless. And overnight, we were able to convert into paperless transactions without any impact to business continuity. So this is an interesting or two latest trends, that we see. Apart from that, end-to-end vehicle track and trace coupled with camera-based technology for vehicle and driver performance management. We'll speak a little bit about that in the subsequent couple of slides. Also, again, underrated, but and more internal to organizations, but logistics continues to remain a very, very coordination intensive domain, and a domain which uh, touches multiple touch points within any particular organization, and of course external touch points also. So it's heartening to see some good innovations happening in the enterprise resource planning, ERP space, or SAP, Oracle, whatever, or any other technology that organizations are using. And we do see a speeding up of innovations post pandemic as needs started changing. um, there's also interesting solutions in the market around source to pay portals. I see this as something, I won't say this is something new, but I see a large focus around, how you're sourcing your logistics requirements to how you're making those payments. So a lot of portals coming up as services in the market. And finally, we spoke about this earlier, but I want to re-emphasize on the concept of control tower mechanisms. So the logistics industry being again a very transactional intensive industry, we are creating millions of transactions on a daily basis of goods moving from one place to another, paperwork moving, complaint handling, reverse logistics. So it's so much. Everything is constantly, quite literally, moving in the industry, and there's so much of valuable data generated. And with the advancement of data science in the industry, how can we create data models, or how can we analyze this data to our advantage and create those visualization models which immediately tell you these are the leading indicators of issues in your system, or these are the lagging indicators of issues in the system, and how we use that data very, very strategically to drive decisions. I think that's this is a trend which is right now just exploding. And for organizations who are not already in this space, this is definitely a space where some of your digital investments could possibly go. And I come to my favorite topic. So, nicer globe, very, very close to my heart. I can't see the audience over here, so I can't take that poll or ask, if everybody's aware about nicer globe. But we are in a chemical forum. We are talking about logistics digitalization. So, the story cannot be complete till we mention this industry level success story. So if I connect, so yeah, for the benefit of all, I'll assume that people on the call are not aware of nicer globe. So maybe take a step back and talk about some basics. So in the previous slides we spoke about safety and sustainability being a core focus area or the top priority for the chemical logistics industry. We also spoke around the crossroads around centralized, decentralized strategy, where we said that cost becomes an important element. And we also spoke about how control tower mechanisms are needed, or are one of the trends to watch out in present and hopefully the next few years. And Nicer Globe as an initiative kind of ties all of that together. So what Nicer Globe is all about? It's nothing but, seven companies coming together a few years ago. I believe it's 8 years now, 8 or 9 years ago, we came together. So Dow, BSF, Alkyl Amines, Covestro, Clariant, Lances, and Deepak Nitrile. Uh, and we came together under the umbrella of Indian Chemical Council, and we realized a very simple thing that, we cannot do this alone. So if each of the organization attempts to create their own strategy and attempts to manage the safety and emergency response requirements of the which are the key requirements in the industry on our own, we are going to hit a roadblock somewhere. And when it comes to safety and sustainability, we are not competitors, we are collaborators. And so we all came together with a common industry vision, and which is to enable the chemical industry with globally acclaimed standards, infrastructure, as well as services for safe and secure transportation through collaboration. So that was the vision with which we came together. We onboarded a technology partner, Techno Purple. And of course, as ICC remained the governing body or the operating body for this initiative, and this initiative was kicked off. And while I don't have time to go into absolute details, want to touch base on what this common initiative at an industry level is delivering. So number one, it digitalizes your gate checks. So when daily on a daily basis, when vehicles report to your gate to take your cargo load, you can do so. It basically converts your manual checklist into an Android-based checklist, where not only can you tick mark all the fitness related requirements of the vehicle and driver, but you can also store it as a repository. So it gets digitally stored. And so if there is an incident with that vehicle later on, you can just go back to the repository as part of your RCI and investigate if there was a lapse in process in those checkpoints. Second, it provides a common portal again at an industry level, which gives live tracking of your in-transit fleet. So you have a GPS on your vehicle. That GPS is connected to the portal, and at any point in time, you can not only see where your fleet has reached, but it also gives you violation alerts. So, for example, if I set my speed limit as 60 kilometers per hour, and the particular vehicle crosses one particular vehicle, let's say, crosses 60 and is operating at 65 or sometimes 70, immediately an alert goes to the right people in the operating system, who immediately take action to stop that vehicle from violating the speed. But the more beautiful part of this also is that, again, it creates a repository of data, and you can create visualizations on a monthly or an annual basis, which tell you that amongst all your logistics service providers, which service providers had the maximum violations or which service providers had the least violations, and you can tie it back into your vendor performance management, which I personally believe is extremely powerful tool to have in place. Apart from this, it has points of interest. So wherever your vehicle is, where's the closest hospital, fire station, police station, industrial area, and so on. There are also vendor audit services that are coming in, which it's possible to leverage at an industry level. So create that best practice pool at an industry level. Reports and data analytics I captured. Not fully related to the digital world, but one more thing that Nicer Globe has been able to accomplish is the establishment of a 24 by 7 level 3 emergency response system. So we have quick response teams at every 90 kilometers on key routes of the country, so that if there's an incident, they can be on call and reach the incident site and help with everything related to the safe cleanup of the entire incident. And then you have driver training, certifications, journey risk assessments. And recently, Nicer Globe actually entered into an MOU with Intel. I think it's a turning point in the Nicer Globe journey. And it's also a testimony of the amazing work that has been delivered so far. With this MOU, Nicer Globe has now entered into camera-based technology for digital performance management of the driver, vehicle, and fleet. So something to watch out for in future. We started with 7 members, and I don't have the exact count today, but I think the last I know we had crossed 66 members from the industry. So if some organizations were part of this I would encourage, if you don't know about Nicer Globe, please get to know about it. And if it makes sense for you, please onboard this service into your organization as well. And in the interest of time, not going through the entire slide over here, but just wanted to emphasize on, the success story over here. So on the previous slide, I spoke about more around the digital nuances, but what Nicer Globe has also helped initiate or enable in the industry is creation of an ecosystem of reliable service providers. So today, there's also like an awards program that we do that ICC hosts in Nicer Globe to award or reward the drivers and service providers and organizations who are performing at the peak of some of the parameters that we discussed in the previous slide. We now have common performance criteria at an industry level. We are establishing and raising the industry standards year on year. We are talking about not just building capabilities but also building capacities. So a lot of operational efficiencies getting delivered. Very simply put, even the monthly meetings that the team has, there's so much of sharing of knowledge and best practices that's a collateral benefit of being part of the Nicer Globe team. Apart from, of course, emergency support, community service, and last but not the least, also coming together to influence policymakers and empowering stakeholders. So, for example, recently we also, through ICC Nicer Globe, we also had meetings with, let's say, the ministries, some of the ministries, to put forth our concerns and say that, this is what currently the laws or the acts say, and this is how we feel it should move in a particular direction from a long-term sustainability point of view. And that's, again, something that's completely underrated, but which will define the future of the industry. Of course, there are challenges, not perfect, but we are learning as we move ahead through strong organizational culture, hand-holding from the Nicer Globe team to the member companies, and continuous focus on engagement among stakeholders. So I think with that, and I know I'm right about time, I would like to thank everybody who listened through this 20-minute presentation with attention. And any questions, I think we are going to have a Q&A session towards the end of this overall event, and I'll be on call. So any questions, feel free to put it in the chat and we'll take it up at the end. Thank you. And Shivani, back to you.
Thank you, Ms. Manika. It was very interesting too. I'll just do a short recap of your session. It was very interesting. You pointed out certain thoughts that we were also seeing in the industry. Some of the trends you mentioned, safety and sustainability is critical, and some of the travel times and multimodal inland transportation and all that you mentioned. These are something that we are also seeing. Asia Pacific is still very road driven transportation for chemical products, while internationally we've seen other modes also doing well. So this is definitely giving you scope for growth, say in driver policies, driver trainings, vehicle management. That is becoming a big thing that we are looking as in logistics. That is something that we've also noticed as media people. Then you mentioned digital technology, how it is important to have a digital strategy. Definitely, that is the first thing everyone says. Think about as an organization perspective or your requirements, and then come up with a strategy. And based on that, you take it forward, rather than just seeing what is available and trying to implement or adopt the same technology. And then in the recent years, we've seen a lot of end-to-end container visibility that is becoming important, vehicle track and trace. These were things that people were asking for, and paperless working. So that was something the pandemic actually saw to it that it happened much faster than what people were anticipating in the future. And it is good to know that Nicer Globe is successful on so many levels. We've heard of it, we've seen the ideas, but it is good as a perspective to know that the industry has collaborated and something has happened very successfully. Like for vendor performance management, that gives a very good important say viewpoint for the industry plus the logistic providers to see how to work together, and come up with a solution. Very interesting. Thanks for that insightful discussion, and maybe we'll take the Q&A at the end, see if people have questions. Fine, great. So moving